March was a decent reading month for me. I found a lot of 4 stars, but not any 5 stars, which is kind of sad. I read 4,684 pages, which equals out to be an average of 152 pages per day throughout the month. And my average page count per book was 360. Unsurprisingly, my most read genre was fantasy romance. I feel like this tends to be a trend this year. I've been really loving my fantasy romance. I read 0 5 stars, 6 4 stars, 3 3 stars, 3 2 stars, and 1 1 star, which leaves me at an average rating of 3.08, which I wish that was higher than it is. I read 3 new releases. That's honestly a lot for me. I don't typically read a lot of new releases. 6 backlist books and 4 that were published last year. The genre breakdown was 7 fantasy romances, 2 traditionally published fantasies, 2 indie published fantasies, and 2 horrors. Now for the actual reviews of the books themselves. I started the month off pretty strong with a 4 star. I read The Bloodstones by Tori Tekken and I really enjoyed this one. This is definitely more of your epic fantasy style story. We're following a really big sprawling world and a big cast of characters, each with their own POVs. In this, the king's son has been murdered, and according to their laws, the king now has to pick his heir from the list of nobles' kids. So his highest ranking nobles, their kids, one of them will be picked to be heir, which obviously leads to the nobles fighting for this right. They want their kid to be the next king. Who wouldn't? Our main couple POVs are of one of these families that could be picked, but there are a few other POVs nestled in there from other families as well. One of my biggest complaints about this book was one of the POVs felt very random to me and I felt disconnected from the rest of the story. It doesn't come for the first time until about 100 pages in, and it just felt very much out of the rest of the story. It felt like it didn't fit in or belong, and it really often took me out of the story. But the other POVs I really enjoyed. I loved seeing all the politics of this. I loved seeing the world building. Tori's strength is really in her world building. It felt like she knew the world. I felt like I belonged there. I felt like everything made sense to me, the way they valued names and the way they took your name away when you were a traitor. Like, there was a lot of richness to the cultures and the politics in this that I really enjoyed. This definitely is a setup book. It's a slow start. We're really just getting to know the world building as the plot slowly starts, but I'm really excited for it all to thicken in book 2. Then I moved on to some vampire fantasy romance and read King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair. I gave this 3 stars. I enjoyed it more than I expected to, but less than I wanted to, which is a really weird statement to say. This follows our main character, Isolde, who is the princess to a ruling nation. However, the vampire king is coming and conquering all the nations of this world, essentially killing everyone who doesn't kneel to him. The thing is, when he gets to this nation, the current king makes a deal with the vampire king in order to save everybody. But the one thing in the deal is that Isolde has to go and marry the vampire king. Isolde agrees to this bargain because she wants to save her people, but she's not happy about it. She thinks vampires are disgusting, evil creatures. But as she explores the vampire court when she's taken away there and gets to know some of the vampires, she realizes that not all is as it seems, and she has probably been told some lies in her past as she grew up. I liked the world building in this. I definitely think that it is a weaker element in this story. Like, it's not the focal point of the story, but I really did like the elements we got. I thought it had really interesting vampire lore and witches lore, and I really enjoyed that. I did enjoy our 2 characters together. I do wish there was more development other than smut. There's a lot of smut in this book, but overall I think I had a good time with this, and I think I would continue on to book 2. Then I read A Fate Inked in Blood by Daniel L. Jensen. This is an author I've previously really enjoyed from. I really did enjoy the Bridge Kingdom series. I've read book 1, 2, and 3. I haven't read 4 yet. Honestly, Daniela Jensen did not let me down. I gave this one 4 stars. I thought it was a fun time. I really liked the world building and the plot in this. The romance probably could have used more development, but I think the plot and the cool world really just blew me away. This is a Viking romance. It kind of leans into the forbidden romance aspect, as our main character, what's her name? Our main character, Freya, has been gifted with a god's blood. The thing is, there is a prophecy about her. The prophecy essentially says that she will bring honor and glory to the person who controls her. The thing is, she doesn't want to be controlled. She is like, no man will ever control me. So she hides her powers from the outside world. But one day something happens and she is forced to use her powers in front of a king who is mean. And he takes her back, forces her to marry him, but wants nothing to do with her other than what the prophecy will give. So he sends his son son to train her, take care of her, all of those things. And so there's a forbidden romance between his son and her. They could have played a little bit more into that. Like, I will give you that. However, I really liked the world building, the idea of the gods' bloods, the people with the god powers being unfated. So they had the ability to change other people's fate ties and all of that. I think that there was a really cool, complex world in this that really worked for me. And I'm excited to see where this story goes in future installments, even though it was a little bit predictable, but there's a cave scene in this that I really liked. After that, I read Slaying the Frost King, and honestly, I have nothing good to say about this book. I typically like to get on here and tell you that, like, I didn't like these things, but can see why other people would like these things. Don't have a lot to say about this book. We're gonna move on pretty quickly. This follows our world where there is a Frost King who tells his towns to sacrifice an animal every certain amount of days. We follow a town then that decides to go against the sacrificing policy because they need food. And when this gets back to the king, he says, "You betrayed me, so now you're going to sacrifice someone of your town instead of an animal, and it's going to be someone of my choosing." When the king goes to the town, he picks our main character, but he brings her back to his home because there's something about her that is special and unique, and he can't bring himself to sacrifice her like he's supposed to. The world building in this was pretty much non-existent, beside there was some demons that were coming out of literally nowhere to attack them, and that it was cold. The romance in this really gave me the ick. The Frost King himself gave me the ick. I thought that he was disgusting. Like, I didn't like the romance in this. He was essentially calling our main character ugly a few times, and I just, like, didn't like that. And there was this licking the lollipops. Like, the sex scenes just gave me cringe. Like, I honestly did not like this book. I gave it 1 star. I'm so sorry. Obviously, there are things that people will like about this book. It just wasn't for me, and I don't have a lot of nice things to say about it, so I'm going to move on. After that, I moved on to a reread, and I picked up The Girl in the Mountain by Mark Lawrence. I originally gave this book 5 stars, so I was really excited to get this high again after the last book. Sadly, I ended up giving this one 3 stars on reread, which was a really big letdown. It was really sad for me. I was really disappointed. This is the second book in the Book the Ice series. In this series, we're following Yaz, who lives out on the ice, and on the ice you have a testing day where if you're deemed broken, you're then pushed into the pit of the missing. Yaz's brother is pushed into the pit of the missing, and she goes, "Oh no," and she jumps right in after her brother, and she realizes that there's a lot under the ice that she didn't know. This second book is definitely a reveal book, and so having already read it, originally I was gasping at the reveals. I was like, oh my god. On reread, I didn't feel that way because I already knew them, so I think that definitely took a little bit of my enjoyment out. And then also, I was confused a lot in this book, and on initial read, I think I just thought, wow, I haven't read the first book for like a year and a half, so I just thought I was confused because I was forgetting things. But on reread, I had read the first book a month and a half ago, not to mention I'd already read this second book, so when I was confused, I felt annoyed that I was confused and not understanding things. I felt like I should have been understanding more than I was. I didn't love this one, but I'm excited to see where the series ends because I do think that there are some really interesting concepts in this book that I still really, really enjoy. Then I read Blood and Steel by Helen Schuer. I giggled all night long in this book. I stayed up really late one night reading this. I had a whole lot of fun. I thought Wilder and Althea were just like a really fun dynamic to read about, and it kept me turning the pages. This follows a world where there is a prophecy that a woman will wield a dagger and bring darkness. This has been interpreted to mean that they're going to bring the big bad shadow race. So women have been banned from wielding blades. This is not going to stop Althea, whose only life goal is to be a war sword of the realm. Althea does get caught wielding a sword and is given the chance to prove the prophecy wrong, essentially, and Wilder Hawthorne is going to end up helping her. I don't know, Wilder really was my favorite part of this. Their relationship is very hot and cold. One was into it, the other one wasn't, then the other one was into it, and then one wasn't, and I just thought it was kind of a fun dynamic to play on in book 1. The reason this didn't get 5 stars for me is because I do think the pacing was off, and I think the plot needed a little bit more oomph to it, but I had a good time with our leads when they were together. I didn't pick up Thousand Rune right after this, but I did pick it up this month, so I'm going to talk about it. This is the second book in this series. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I did not like it as much as the first. This kind of repeats the dynamic of the first between them, and I kind of wanted more character development, more relationship development for them. Instead, this was essentially just, they fought, they slept together, they said they couldn't be together, they fought, they slept together, they said they couldn't be together, and repeat again and again and again. Eventually, I stopped thinking that was fun and just kind of was like, okay, get over it, this is toxic, we need something new. This just didn't add a lot to the story for me. me. Even like at the end of book 1 there was some like cool reveals, and in book 2 I was like, oh, we're gonna get answers to that. And I didn't really get anything new. The only like really big reveal is something I already knew because I've read Slaying the Shadow Prince. I'm torn because I don't think I would like Blood and Steel as much if I hadn't read Slaying the Shadow Prince first. However, I think I would have liked this more if I hadn't read Slaying the Shadow Prince. So I'm torn between what I would recommend. I think it really just depends. I don't know. I'm excited to read book 3. I'm interested in book 3, but book 2 definitely was a little bit disappointing to me after my high of book 1. And then I read Demon by Rob J. Hayes, which is one of his trilogy of trilogy books. These are not currently out yet, but I backed the Kickstarter, so I have access to them. This is the first prequel in that series. It goes Demon, then Deathless, then Herald. Demon follows a world where the demons have taken over. They are everywhere and they cannot be killed. Towns, humans do everything they can to avoid being spotted by the demons, but when the demons come and overrun her town, our main character is taken by them as a prisoner and is taken back to their camp and forced to work for them as like a runt, like a work runt, like just to do all the dirty jobs that they don't want to do. This book is dark. There's cannibalism in it and I really loved it. I felt so disturbed during it. It was a true like dark fantasy. Like it had some horror elements to it. This really just follows our main character as she is dealing with the situation that she's in. But I was constantly like, oh my god, because there was disturbing things happening. And I really, really, really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars and I can't wait to continue on in this world and read Deathless. This is my favorite book of the month, I think. I liked this one the most. Then I picked up a horror and I read Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. This was a disappointment. I gave it 2 stars. I loved Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison, so I was expecting something like that. This is a lot more literary leaning in my eyes. We're essentially following our main character who is bitten by a werewolf, and then you watch her spiral as she turns into a werewolf. So you're just like in her head watching her thoughts. The entertainment factor wasn't there. Since you're just like kind of witnessing someone's thoughts, there was no like plot or intrigue to keep me like intrigued. I wish that I almost hadn't known that she was bitten by a werewolf and I was like, oh, is it a werewolf or is it something else? Like, is it all in her head? Like, I wish that there was a spiral that way. I always knew it wasn't just in her head because we see her bit by that werewolf. There is some really good commentary in this, especially with like childbirth and pregnancy, because her sister is pregnant and she's turning into a werewolf, and there's like a conversation about like your body not being your own during these phases and this transformation, and I thought that was really well done, but just entertainment value for me, this didn't hit, so I gave it a 2. However, I do like Rachel Harrison's writing style. Like, I like the tone of her writing with like the slight comedy, so I think I will be continuing to try from Rachel Harrison. Next up, I read Bound by Mark Lawrence, which is a short story. It's like 40 pages, which happens between book 2 and 3 in the Book of the Ancestor trilogy. I liked this. I gave it 4 stars. I have nothing to say. It's literally just like a character moment that happens. It has nothing to do with the overall arch of the story. It just like feeds into like one of the character ships, and I really enjoyed it. Then I picked up Heartless Hunter or The Crimson Moth. It's called both things just depending on where it's been published. I gave this one 4 stars. It's a YA fantasy. I thought it was a fun time. I originally thought I was going to DNF this about 100 pages in, and then I'm really glad I didn't because the latter half was incredible. This follows a world where witches were on top. They were the powerful ones, but there's just been a revolution and now all the witches are being hunted and killed. Our main character is a witch, but she's hiding that as she tries to work from the inside out to save the witches from being executed. Now there's a witch she needs to save, but it's high profile and she needs to get some access, so she tries to make one of the top leading guards, the top witch hunter, fall in love with her so that she can get close and save the witches. And the funny thing is, he's kind of doing the same thing because he thinks that she might be the vigilante that is kind of saving all the witches, so he's trying to get close to her to find out the truth to then kill her. I think the banter was fun in this. I really enjoyed their character moments. I enjoyed the conversation on power corrupting in this. I thought this was a really interesting read by the end of it, and I had a lot of fun with it. And then I read Candy Cane Kills, and this was a slasher that I gave 2 stars. Now, it's a slasher, so if you're just in it for the kills, like you're just wanting to read a book with like some fun, unique kills, I think that you will like this. For me, I prefer my slashers to have a little bit more discussion and like time to them. I think this was too short for me. The first 50% was really good, and I thought we were going to be setting up some like good discussions considering one of the characters had disability. Like there was a disability rep in this, and I thought that was going to be really interesting to see how that character and the other characters around that character reacted in the situation they were in. And I thought we were going to have some really honest discussions about people's experiences. However, when the kills started in the last 50%, it was just kill, 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 kill. There was no like time between them to breathe. I like to see how characters react in situations when those things are happening. That's like one of the things I love about a slasher, is like watching the inner workings of the characters and how they're going to get out of it, and like what their first thought is, whether they're going to save someone, whether they're in it for themselves, things like that. And we didn't get those moments in this one. It was just about the gory kills. So I didn't love it. I gave it 2 stars, but I think if you are more in it just for the fun time vibes, you would like this one. This is a slasher set during Christmas time. They go and they rent out an Airbnb essentially during Christmas time. They find out that someone has died previously within the place they've rented out, and things start to go wrong from there. And then I read Duel with the Vampire Lord by Elise Kova. I gave this one 4 stars. This follows a world where every full moon, the vampires come and try to kill the humans. So we follow a town that's literal only existence is to stop the vampires from going any further. Everyone in this town knows their place. They're like a warrior, a chef, something like this, and we follow our main character, who is the Forge Maiden. Her family is the only one with the secrets on how to make the blades that kill the vampires, so her family is very cherished and she herself is very, very well protected. However, her brother is one of these soldiers, and her brother is going on this like special moon to kill the vampire lord. She knows something's wrong and she runs after to save her brother, and she gets kidnapped by the vampire lord and taken back to the vampire realm, where she realizes there's been some misunderstanding at one point. There's something going on, there's a miscommunication happening between the humans and the vampires, and she might be the only way to fix that. I really liked watching the whole plotline of this unravel. I really liked the world building in this. I thought it was really cool. I thought the like scary vampires were cool. Like I liked the vampires stayed very scary. I feel like not always are vampires terrifying in fantasy romance books, and I felt like there were some terrifying vampires in this, and I really enjoyed that element. I liked the found family aspect of this. I really just liked the world building in general. The relationship probably could have used some work. It kind of happened a little bit quick. However, I don't know, I had fun with it. I liked it. I would recommend it. It's probably one of my more favorite vampire fantasy romances that I've read. I kind of wish that the book had been either a single book that was shorter than it is, because it's quite long, or a duology. I really wish it had been a duology, to be honest. I think it would have lent really well to a duet, and I honestly just wish I had more time with these characters specifically. I'm excited to explore other books within the series that are in other parts of the world with different magical creatures, but I really liked this vampire society a lot. I thought it was really, really well done. But I'd love to know what your favorite book of the month was. As I said, mine was Demon, and I will leave the vlog where I read Demon up here on the screen for you to watch. And if you'd just like to tell me that you were here, leave me a cupcake emoji in the comments below.